welcome to Cinema Smackdown for Sunday, October 27th, 2019. Well, Shane, it is the apocalypse outside.
Yeah, I swam here.
How are you doing today?
Wet. Wet, soggy, grumpy. So the usual.
Yeah, it's true. Even on a bright sunny day, I've often heard you basically say the same thing. So, here we are. I had a thought that we would do another Halloween episode this week, but if we want to talk about the truly, truly terrifying, we must speak about the current state of the career of a certain film director named Roger Avary. So today's episode will be a Roger Avary tribute episode.
I think that will be plenty scary enough.
There's some scary elements to it.
And a body count.
He's the Eric Red of filmmakers. Just one sec.
He's the Eric Red of more Hollywood vehicular homicides.
He's certainly got a better career than Eric Red, in the sense that Eric Red, I believe, is no longer allowed to work in Hollywood.
Although Roger Avary, tying in with our Halloween theme, is also cursed. He has this terrible hex put upon him where every time he makes a film, people will refer to it as Tarantino-esque.
Yes.
Which I'm sure sticks in his craw like nothing you could possibly imagine.
Well, we can't really start a conversation about Roger Avary's current film, which is called Lucky Day, before we talk a little bit about who he is and how he got to where he was. So we're going to do a little career overview with a little bit of commentary on our thoughts, and then we will do a full review, more than likely with some pretty heavy spoilers, about Roger Avary's 2019 movie, Lucky Day. But let's start off, you mentioned Tarantino. These two men began their careers as video store clerks together at a place called Video Archives. This is famously where Quentin Tarantino started being known to the public, recommending movies to people.
And that's where their lives were plagiarized for the movies Clerks.
I really don't think it's fair to ever complain that Tarantino's life might have been plagiarized. That seems like a terrible door to open. I think if you, So these two guys worked together. They were both trying to break into the film industry. They were both writing. They were both trying to get their stuff off the ground. When opportunity knocked, if you're not aware of this, they both worked together on a Dolph Lundgren workout video.
Oh, okay. Did they get to oil him up?
Apparently, according to Tarantino's anecdote I once heard, they were very excited to basically be PAs on this film. They arrive, and only to be told, we're going to be shooting on this lawn, which is currently covered in dog shit. It is your job to get a plastic bag and clear all of that off. So that apparently was their contribution to the Dolph Lundgren workout video from around 1991 or something like that.
I think that set a theme for much of their subsequent careers.
It's an interesting starting point. Of course, the first Tarantino thing that got him noticed in Hollywood was not the movie Reservoir Dogs, but rather the script for True Romance, which did the rounds and made him sort of famous in the...
Right, he wrote a few scripts that were sort of meant to be his directorial debut.
Right.
So
but
there was that, there was Natural Born Killers, and there was Reservoir Dogs.
Eventually, there was Reservoir Dogs. Reservoir Dogs was actually a reaction to, I think, selling True Romance and not getting to direct it himself. It was, I better write something I know I can make cheap. But the reason I bring up True Romance is because whether or not it says so on the credits for the film, it is co-written by Avary. He has as much said a lot of the ideas from that film come from things he came up with that
And then Tarantino turned around and took credit for everything? Imagine.
Well, what's pretty funny is a lot of what Roger Avary wrote for True Romance is now in Pulp Fiction. So the idea that a character would accidentally get his head blown apart in a car was originally a scene in True Romance, for instance. And I believe the cleanup sequence is also from that. There's a lot of little ideas that they had many more crime concepts in True Romance than what ended up in the finished film. What's fascinating, though, is likely most of what you see in the finished movie is Tarantino's at this point, which probably explains why there's not even a story by credit for Avary. However, the fascinating thing is, as you may know, the theatrical cut of True Romance includes a very happy ending. In fact, even the director's cut includes a happy ending. It is only that strange but interesting fan film, the Quentin Tarantino cut of True Romance that I've seen, which is very interesting.
That's out there. I don't know how that came into being.
It is a nice little piece of work seeing someone recut the film properly. But at any rate...
Well, specifically also that it jumps around in time like Tarantino scripts always do, whereas the theatrical version we got is a very linear story.
Correct. The interesting thing is, the version of True Romance that exists now includes a happy ending, which the script didn't. It did not include an even remotely happy ending. And the happy ending that exists now was commissioned by Tony Scott from Roger Avary. Roger Avary is the person who wrote the entire last 6 minutes of the film that exists now.
So he's the one who came up with, I don't know, eye patch.
Yeah, magic eye patch, as I like to put it.
Uh-huh.
There's nothing that pulls your brain back inside your head like a magic eye patch. As I call it, the magic eye patch Elvis ending.
Right.
It's a truly terrible last minute of a film, which I have heard people cheer for. I know people who...
Well, because you just want those two crazy kids to stick together and get away with it all.
Yeah, which is crazy. It is crazy.
Even though they're both clearly psychopaths.
Yeah. What I really love about the script for True Romance and the properly edited together version of the film is that you watch a portrait of two psychos very much like Malick's Badlands. It is. It's very much like that. I mean, admittedly, they're both as crazy as Martin Sheen is in that movie. Because his face is a little bit unwilling.
She has a bizarro, disconnected element to it, to the violence that enables him.
Yeah,
so.
Precisely. So when you watch the film and you really watch it with your eyes wide open and don't try to mask it in, this aura of beauty and romance, which isn't in the film, they are crazy, terrible people, one of whom... Berkowitz style is being given orders by an imaginary mentor to murder people. Like, let's be really clear. The Clarence character in True Romance is ordered to kill by an imaginary figure in his mind. That's not a hero.
Mm-hmm.
That's a terrible, terrible person who needs to be put down.
Or at least in a very small padded room.
Yeah, so the original ending of True Romance is he dies. Spoiler, he dies horribly. I mean, the thing is, that scene is in the film. You see him get shot in the head, and the whole point of the end of the movie is she gets stuck alone without him, which is a fine crime movie ending. It's a film noir, it's fine. You don't need to see them magically happily on a beach with a suitcase full of money. By the way, the amount of money they had in that film... it would have lasted them 2 years.
What? You don't think they're fiscally responsible psychopaths?
It would have lasted them
I'm sure
2
they
to
would
3
have.
years.
They would have invested it all in a high dividend yielding stock of blue chip. They would have been very safe and secure and responsible.
I mean, it's one thing if you are living in a cheap apartment, you find a suitcase full of money, it could probably sustain you for quite a while. If you're on the run from the mob, going from motel to hotel to what have you day after, your money's gone in a year.
Yeah, well, Christopher Walken's still out there somewhere looking for him.
I like that idea.
To this day.
I do like that idea.
I want that sequel.
I do want that sequel. So we began talking about, well, we are talking about Roger Avary's film career building up to talking about his new movie. So Avary was just this guy who Tarantino knew, who Tarantino started to get famous and money, and he finally got Reservoir Dogs produced, and he got a reputation. And basically Tarantino was like, hey, maybe my friend can also get a career. So he introduced him to his producer, and I'm sure you know this is a pretty famous story, but Tarantino's producer, I think his name is Lawrence Bender, Bender said, we were scouting locations for one of our movies, and we came upon this really great abandoned, essentially, bank, and we can rent it cheap. So what I want to do is reach out to all the people I know and find out who's got a bank robbery script. And Roger Avary just lifted his hand and said, I've got one, then proceeded to go home and write one, because that's
right.
how it goes.
Yeah.
And that was Killing Zoe. And Killing Zoe, he wrote it in like 4 days. And it's a good film. It's a clever little crime movie. It has a lot of good points. I will say there's bits of it that are uneven, where it's just like, well, that's a strange moment in a movie that doesn't really seem to go anywhere. I don't know if you recall the cat scene.
No, it's been a long time since I've seen it.
So there's a scene in the movie, for no particular reason, they're coming back to the apartment. It's Eric Stoltz and his drug addict buddies who are all planning a big heist, and they're walking down the hallway just to get to the apartment. and there's a cat laying on the ground, and one of them says, "Oh, it's a sleepy cat." And the guy goes, "I don't know, that cat looks dead." And the guy goes, "That cat's not dead." And he steps on its head, and it doesn't react, and he goes, "Oh yeah, I guess it's dead." And then they just go in the apartment, and you're like, what was that? Why in God's name did I just have to see that happen? And
because they had a bank to spare, and they also happen to have a dead cat lying around. So, you just throw that into the film because value.
He just happens, by the way, when I say steps, he just taps on the cat's head with his foot, but it's aggressive.
So they don't go full Boondock Saints on it.
They do not. They do not. But it's still a rough enough moment where I'm like, why did I have to see that for no reason in this movie? And I did actually listen many, many years ago. I don't remember very much about it, but I did listen to the commentary track for Killing Zoe by Roger Avary, where he said, "So when you write in your script you want a dead cat, the prop guy brings you 100 dead cats."
Well, you got to cast it, obviously.
He said this guy had a trailer full.
Well, there are outlets.
That's quite horrifying.
Do you want a toe? I can get you a toe inside of an hour. Do you want a dead cat? I can get you a dead cat in 5 minutes flat.
Anyway, apparently this is a thing that happens. So, at any rate, Roger Avary succeeded in directing a movie called Killing Zoe. It came out in 93. I don't remember if it was before or after True Romance, but it's around the same time. It was a year after Reservoir Dogs. What's interesting is it was a year before Pulp Fiction. So Avary his directorial debut got it there before.
Mm-hmm.
He actually got noticed for that. And I'll just say I'm a big fan of Killing Zoe. That's the movie that made me want to follow this guy's career.
Right.
It's odd, it's interesting, it's shot in 3 distinct tones.
Mm-hmm.
The movie's cut into thirds. Each third is a different colored filter. So I believe it's white, then blue, then red for the bank.
Right, because it's a France thing, is it not? Yeah.
And the actual bank is red. They painted the interior of the bank off red. So when the movie becomes a massacre near the end, it's quite something to see red on red.
Mm-hmm.
At any rate, it's a very interesting thematic choice. I don't usually like it when people are so overt as to have a full color for a sequence. But, Soderbergh does it pretty regularly, and it can be fun, and I think Killing Zoe is one of the better ones of those. At any rate, we're going to take a quick break, and we will come back with more on Roger Avary's career leading up to our review of his new film called Lucky Day. I had totally forgotten what it was called for a second. What was that called?
Blue Skies turns out to present Alex Cameron, the Australian indie pop artist.
Alright, let's go so far. And, certainly didn't take much to fill 15 minutes.
At 9 p.m.
Sounded a little bit froggy after hearing this shit.
You got some notes?
I just wrote down his films just in case I needed to.
Yeah, well, we'll get through it.
Have a look. It's nothing you don't have. Unless, will you be mentioning Glitterati?
Founded in 2002.
You can if you want to. I know the story of it. I've got it on the list, but I have a feeling by the time we get that far down, we're going to be at the halfway point of the show. I mean, you can save it as an anecdote for later, because you know the anecdote?
A little bit.
Oh, I know the whole thing, so
okay.
I know the process of how it got made. But if you want to bring it up, I'll fill in your gaps.
Yeah, no.
We can save it for...
If space permitting,
exactly.
Bring it up, yeah.
But I'll say, keep it for the end, because it's an unreleased film. Oh, here we go. And we're back on CJLO 1690. Our show is called Cinema Smackdown. I'm Michael Brody. I'm joined today by Shane Simmons, and we are, in a true Halloween terrifying manner, running down the film history and life history of Roger Avary today.
A scary film career.
And an even scarier real life.
Yeah, beware this may happen to you if you venture into the film industry.
So we touched on his early work and his debut film, Killing Zoe, which I'm quite fond of, and now I'll say a few things about Pulp Fiction, which I only recently learned that are more interesting to me than the actual film.
Oh.
Here is the most interesting thing I've heard about Pulp Fiction. Pulp Fiction, I've always thought, was a terrible title. It's like, why are you literally describing what this is? It's called Words in Book. It's just a very descriptive... You're about to watch a fake movie about this topic. It's a strange choice of phrasing.
Well, it's better than your original title. 70s nostalgia.
However, the title Pulp Fiction makes a lot more sense once you realize the genesis of the project was the same as the project Four Rooms. Remember Four Rooms?
Yes, I do.
The later on Tarantino and many other directors' project.
Of which there's only 1.5 good segments.
I find it interesting that movie exists at all. And by the way, if you don't like the first 2 segments of the movie, you can blame Tarantino and Rodriguez because they insisted the other stories be trimmed down to nothing. So that I've read the scripts for them. They're a great deal more interesting and detailed than what you see on screen.
The Witch one in particular would be a very tall order to make that better than the crap it is.
I think you mean anything would make it better.
Yeah, that's terrible. The other one is boring. Then the Rodriguez one is amusing, and the Tarantino one is fun. But
I would actually say
by that time, you were so checked out of that movie.
I'd say the Rodriguez one is significantly better than the Tarantino one, but the Tarantino one has a great button.
Yeah.
However, we're not here to talk about Tarantino, actually. We're here to talk about Avary. So here was the idea behind Pulp Fiction. It was going to be 3 stories by 3 different directors. So one of the stories, I'm pretty sure the gist of it would be the Mia Wallace, Vincent Vega story is Tarantino. The Bruce Willis versus Marcellus Wallace, so Butch versus Marcellus Wallace story was entirely Roger Avary.
Yeah,
that entire sequence is his.
And that's the best material.
And the third story, this is not a joke, was to be a segment by Adam Rifkin.
Oh my God.
Rifkin was asked to join the project, and by the time Avary and Tarantino had pretty much fulfilled their commitments to writing their third of the movie, Rifkin hadn't started working on it yet. So Tarantino said, screw it, I'm just going to do the whole thing myself. Mm-hmm. So that's why Pulp Fiction wound up being essentially one man's vision versus a chunk movie of an anthology, if you will.
So basically, all the A material in that film, the stuff that everyone really, really likes, is Roger Avary material.
Yes.
And Tarantino gets all the credit.
Yes. At any rate, but Tarantino, of course, rewrote it. The original script for the Butch Coolidge, Marcellus Wallace sequence does not end the way this one does. I believe it ends with everybody dead.
Okay.
It's one of those kind of, which I have to say,
except probably the French girl, because Roger Avary seems to have this fetish for French girls in all his work.
Well, yeah, everything he does has French characters and or ladies in it. I don't know though. I'm not so sure. It is pretty well established once you pay attention to the dialogue that she is pregnant, and he's not above blowing away a pregnant woman just to annoy the audience on some level. At any rate, so if you perhaps remember, Tarantino and Avary won an Academy Award for Best Screenplay for that, and Roger Avary had the greatest Academy Awards winning speech of all time. He leaned into the microphone and said, "I really gotta pee." That is his acceptance speech.
Honestly, that's better than 90% of Oscar speeches.
Admittedly, you know.
Yeah, that's.
I'm hearing. Sorry, folks. I'm hearing a little bit of angry music coming in from outside. If you want to push that window.
Yeah, we're having competing audio here.
Yeah, it's.
That's not going to close anymore. There's already a big thing through it.
Nothing like frantically waving at something for good radio. All right, so we've covered a little bit the Pulp Fiction element. I wanted to mention quickly, because this is really where we explain the dynamic between Avary and Tarantino. There is a movie from 1994 called Sleep With Me, not written by either of them, but featuring a cameo by Quentin Tarantino at a party giving a monologue to somebody. It's basically 2 drunk guys having a quick chat, and Tarantino says, "Hey, have you ever seen that movie Top Gun?" And then he goes on to explain how Top Gun is the greatest gay film ever made, with plenty of examples about how every single thing in that movie is a gay reference.
To the point now that everyone looks at Top Gun as a homoerotic classic.
Exactly. Here's the thing. Tarantino's entire monologue is essentially credited to him. When Roger Avary saw the film, he was astonished to see Tarantino doing a word-perfect rendition of the monologue he used to do at parties. So Tarantino, it's 100% lifted a concept Avary had been walking around telling as a joke for quite a long time, and just did it in a film without crediting anyone.
Yeah, well,
So-
I mean, at this point, with Reservoir Dogs, Tarantino had already built his career on plagiarism, so
Yeah.
why stop there?
So that was exactly the moment when Roger Avary said, I wouldn't work with him again under these conditions. This guy just steals.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where they pretty much split and never come back together. I mean, who knows what the future will hold? Perhaps he'll be in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood 2.
And as we all know, Tarantino faded into obscurity, never to be heard from again, and Roger Avary became the most celebrated filmmaker in Hollywood.
Well, once Avery's Manson movie comes out, I'm sure that's exactly what happened. So Roger Avary, we're talking about this. We're still in 1994 at this point. So Roger Avary went on to write a couple of movies that essentially no one has seen. He did a movie in '95 called Crying Freeman, which is an adaptation of the manga comic. He worked on a film for a couple of years called RPM, which was a car theft movie that eventually did get made with David Arquette, but apparently the film is so different than Avery's original script, he's not listed anymore. And eventually, enough time went by. Avery did a quick TV movie called Mr. Stitch. Have you seen that?
Oh, I've heard of it, but no, I have not
Stars
seen it.
Will Wheaton and Ron Perlman, and it's hallucinatory. It's basically a Frankenstein kind of character gets sewn together from parts and has a little moment in an asylum, and that's pretty much most of the movie. It is, I believe it was supposed to be a pilot for a TV show that never really happened, but it doesn't work. I've seen it. It's fair. That's my review. It's fair. It's watchable, but not particularly. It doesn't feel like it should go anywhere, and it doesn't. So, finally, and this is the biggest piece of his career, of Avery's career, is in 2002 he releases The Rules of Attraction. And The Rules of Attraction, it's not a perfect movie, but there's so much love of film in that movie. It's on that level of a guy saying, this is my Kubrick movie. I'm going to make this film, I'm going to movie this movie as hard as possible.
This is my Kubrick film about obnoxious college kids screwing each other.
Yeah, but, I mean, the main character is a sociopath. A full-on,
Now,
unhinged-
are you talking about Patrick Bateman's brother
Yes.
character? Yes.
Like, he is clearly broken on his emotions are completely out of whack. He never alludes to murdering people, but everything he's saying and doing is like, well, this is the kind of thing someone says before they start killing people.
Yeah, well, he'll get to it. His brother is prolific, so he'll just follow in his footsteps.
Exactly. I don't know if you remember, but there is actually a scene in that movie where the phone rings and he answers it, and he says, he waits for a moment for a beat, and then he goes, Patrick? And there's no answer,
And he says, no, it's Batman.
So I'm a big fan of Rules of Attraction. I like its nihilism. I like how beautifully shot it is. I like the strangeness. It's also practically an anthology film in itself. It's tiny little chunks of story about all these characters.
And I like the poster.
I don't even
That's
remember
the thing that I liked most about this film, I'm afraid to say. It was the poster with the teddy bear Kama Sutra.
Oh yeah, I remember that one.
Yeah.
That's one of the posters.
Yeah, one of the posters,
Yeah.
yes.
And,
The good one.
It is the good one, but it features about 24 weird and interesting cameos, including Bud Cort, including... actually, I might be misremembering that, because I know Paul Williams is in the film briefly, and I might be misremembering
yeah, they're
that
practically
as being
doppelgangers, aren't
at
they?
that point.
They're
But
cut from
definitely-
the same block of wood. Yeah.
There's an interesting cameo from Clifton Collins Jr. playing kind of an angry drug dealer character. There's a lot of people who just sort of wander into this movie briefly and wander out again. Jay Baruchel is in it for a moment. He's in the Paul Williams scene. There's a lot of good stuff, and it features James Van Der Beek doing things that at the time he was on Dawson's Creek that are quite literally career-ending moments. And he himself said, wow, there's some stuff in this I shouldn't have let them film. You know, there's a scene of him sitting on a toilet that is not the kind of thing you want your golden boy CW actor doing.
Is it the Michael Cera moment of this is the end? That sort of...
It's just unpleasant. It's just one of those things that you could easily make a meme out of and kind of ruin somebody over.
There's plenty of bathroom scenes that should have been career-ending for many actors. So.
True. At any rate, I'm a big fan of Rules of Attraction. I thought it was a really interesting direction for this director to go in. But sadly, that's essentially where his directing career ends. In the next couple of years, Avary made he contributed to a few films. He wrote the screenplay for Silent Hill, which is unwatchable.
I would disagree with you there. I thought it was.
I like that you crap on Rules of Attraction.
Yeah, I will. I will
Hill.
raise up Silent Hill as
God.
being, as far as movies based on horror video games, that's the Rolls Royce of them.
Ugh.
Because beyond that,
No.
You're into Uva Bowl territory.
I have nothing on hand to counter with, and I know there's things that are better than that. And I'm not going to do
I know you're a big fan of Super Mario Brothers, which is a horror video game of a sort.
It definitely is. It's a horror game of a sort. I thought that the Silent Hill movie was pointless and irritating. And as soon as a movie feels irritating, I can't champion it. That's kind of my place there. But then again, it's yet another movie where Sean Bean dies, right? So,
well,
it's always in a plus column there.
Unless he's playing Sharp, he's dead.
Sean Bean recently said in an interview, "I no longer consider scripts where my character dies. It's become too much of a running joke."
Oh, well, now it's a spoiler. Spoiler for every role he takes from now on.
I'm pretty sure that was just one Wednesday afternoon's thoughts.
Even in The Martian, when they retire him, I think they take him out back and retire him.
I don't remember that at all.
Yeah.
So Avery contributed to the Silent Hill screenplay, and then he wrote with Neil Gaiman the Beowulf cartoon movie, which I've never seen.
Yeah, I've seen it.
Because after seeing the Christmas movie,
yeah, this is the other really upsetting Uncanny Valley Robert Zemeckis movie.
Yeah.
This one probably even more so than the train one.
Really?
Yeah, there's weird, like, okay, you were making these characters CG. They are eerily realistic, but not quite human. And there's a character, well, the main character in it, has hairs growing out of his nose, not out of his nostrils, out of his nose, like the bridge of his nose.
And they felt the need to really
and you can't not look at it because you realize that was a choice to put that there, because it's not on the real actor this is based on, and it's not everything we're looking at is a cartoon. So why is that there?
I'll remind the listener that you are listening to CJLO 1690 AM. Our show is called Cinema Smackdown. Today we are running down the Roger Avary hits, because when it comes to Halloween spookiness, nothing is quite as eerie as what I'm about to tell you about Roger Avary and what happened to him next, because the very next thing that Roger Avary got up to was vehicular manslaughter. In 2008, Roger Avary, and at this point I only read today for the first time, pleaded not guilty to gross vehicular manslaughter and 2 felony counts of causing bodily injury while intoxicated. I like the part where he was still hedging his bets. Not guilty, Your Honor. So,
I totally wasn't in that accident, and that person totally isn't dead.
At any rate, he was sentenced to, amazingly, when you've killed somebody and grossly injured 2 more people, well, it's 100% your fault. He was sentenced to merely 1 year in work furlough, which meant he was allowed to go to his job during the day and report back to a furlough facility at night. And
5 of promotion, I believe.
5...
Probation.
No, promotion is what you're sentenced to when you're in Hollywood.
Yeah, exactly. That's usually...
You're sentenced to a lifetime of promotion. And watching Crispin Glover do the interview circuit for this new movie is certainly underlines the hell of promoting things.
Well, getting yourself involved in some sort of wrongful death is always good promotion or a good career move for many an actor or director whose career is on the slide.
Absolutely. And so Roger Avary was in the middle of his year of going to sleep in a jail while getting to leave during the day, and he was doing the thing he'd been doing for many, many years. He was basically blogging about it. So he was tweeting and writing posts.
A little addicted to social media.
Yeah, so Roger Avary was an early adopter of social media. He would write notes about working in Hollywood on a near daily basis. I used to visit his website back in the Rules of Attraction day, and he had a lot to say about how it was to try to make deals and try to get actors interested, and all about his work habits. I I can't prove this because everything's been taken down at this point, but my recollection is that at one point Roger Avary had a camera in his office that allowed you to watch him work in real time for quite a while. He had this up. And he said, yeah, there it is. There it is. And I think he had it up for the purpose of forcing himself to work, because he felt like if you tune in and I'm not working, I'm a jerk. So I'd better make myself available. Much like an early cam girl, Roger Avary was pouring it out to Hollywood. So
was he selling his bathwater as well?
Again, the websites have all been taken down, so I can't tell you what was originally available. At any rate, so Avary was doing his stint in jail again for killing somebody and doing a bunch of other terrible things, entirely his fault, and he was tweeting about the conditions of his stay, which I believe basically meant him saying, ha ha, look at what I got away with, essentially. Well, here's the thing. The authorities were made aware of him writing about this, and so they revoked his conditions. They took him from this cushy, happy, white-collar situation to real prison for 5 years. That's 5 years in hard, real labor prison for not keeping your damn mouth shut, which is phenomenal. That is if anything is, hey everybody, when it comes to talking about your life, shut up if you don't want to get punched in the mouth.
Yeah, well, snitches get stitches, or in this case, full sentences.
Yeah, so Roger Avary wound up going back to jail for 5 years entirely to serve out everything for this, which is, let's be clear. He killed people. He killed person plus hurt people. He should have done more than 5 years, in my opinion. This is not the kind of thing where you're like, oh, he's learned his lesson. Let him go.
He's an important voice and artist, and therefore we must tolerate this sort of behavior and let him out to do his magic.
So at any rate, I'm not against the fact that they put him back in prison. I'm all for it. Here's the thing. I wrote him off at that point. Not because he did a bad thing, but because what are the chances he's ever going to work again, right? That's the thought is, this guy did a bad thing, he went away, well clearly they'll never let him work again. There are examples of people who've done
I don't know, I'm still waiting on a new movie or TV show out of O.J. Simpson.
I'd watch it, especially if you produced it. So that was 2008, leading into, say, 2013 or 14 was when he was finally released. And I heard nothing about him for a long time. And then very recently, Shane, you were the one who said to me, hey, I heard Roger Avary has a new movie coming out. If it makes it to cinemas, let's go see it. To which I said, he what now? He for real has a movie coming out? And you're like, yeah, I just read it. He's got a movie. I was like,
not just read, I saw a trailer and everything. So.
Somebody let him make a film? Like someone gave him money?
Yep, a new crime film, no less.
I was astonished to hear about that, and ultimately the movie came out a couple of weeks ago. It was straight to VOD. It was not a theatrical release. It's called Lucky Day.
I'm sure it had a limited release.
It stars this Australian actor named Luke Bracey, who I have always found unpleasant in every role. However, this was the first time I have ever seen him play a role with his actual voice. Every other film I've ever seen him do, he's doing that, I am doing an American accent, which falls completely flat for me. For reference, see Luke Bracey as Johnny Utah in the Point Break remake that we're all still talking about. It's one of those blips on the radar like, oh my god, did they actually remake Point Break?
That was they remade what now?
Yeah, and it is a slightly different version of the exact same story, so it's not...
Which we've already seen remade as the Fast and the Furious.
Exactly. So this is just the more extreme sports version of the extreme sports version it originally was.
Uh-huh.
So they took, like, the simplicity...
So instead of surfing, it's, lacrosse, I guess.
It's just a lot more heavy-duty stuff. I have no examples, because while I've seen the movie, I've erased it from my mind. I do know that there are chunks of the exact dialogue from the original film that are recreated poorly, because the main actor can't really deliver them, and the guy they put him against has no charisma. So it's...
Right, so it's Johnny Utah trying to suppress his Australian accent.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Correct.
Sounds like gold.
So I was never a fan of Luke Bracey, and finally he's in this Lucky Day movie, but he's finally playing an Australian character. And I will say, in the opening scenes when I was watching him, I was delighted, because he had a personality. He was kind of bouncy. And then I got 20 more minutes into the movie and realized he was an aimless, ill-written protagonist whose entire story arc doesn't really work. Now, we haven't really gotten into this yet, but I have a feeling we're going to probably talk about
we haven't discussed this film together at all. Not off air, not anywhere yet. So this is... We're going into this completely cold.
I'm not sure if I should tell you the genesis of this movie that I now know before or after we discuss the film itself.
No.
I think after. I'll tell you after.
All right, sure.
While I didn't really like this film, I still could appreciate moments of it, but I found myself scratching my head so many times that you haven't made a movie in 17 years, and this is the film you chose, and these are the sequences you want to present to the world, because so many of them don't work or are farcically funny in a way I don't want any movie to ever be. My review of this movie is, it is one of those cheap Pulp Fiction wannabe movies from 1995.
Oh, so Tarantino-esque.
Very. But at the same time, it's also a carry-on film from England.
It is, the humor is broad. Put it that way.
Yeah.
Shall I share?
Yeah, let's go.
Okay, so I am reluctant to call this the worst film of the year because Rise of Skywalker isn't out yet. And, after Last Jedi, my fingers are crossed that Rise of Skywalker will be as bad, if not worse. And, of course, there is also a new Kevin Smith Jay and Silent Bob movie, which, again, is in the running for my pick for worst film of the year, because the last time they made one about those two characters, it certainly was.
Yeah, but you're never going to see that movie.
No, at this point, I've pretty much boycotted Kevin Smith.
If it doesn't have yoga, hosers, or walruses, I think you're out.
Yeah, I will only see a Kevin Smith project at this point that has the word clerks in the title.
Oh, by the way, it's a strange place to insert this information, but speaking of Yoga Hosers, which is a Canadian parody film by Kevin Smith, Roger Avary is half Canadian.
Yes. He was born in Flin Flon, which is strange because no one is actually from Flin Flon. It is a tiny town with a joke name of only like 5,000 people as a population. And yet, that is where Roger Avary is from.
Yeah, and so part of the deal of making his new film, Lucky Day, was it would be shot in, I'm going to say Hamilton.
Hamilton, yeah. And Toronto, but Hamilton, yeah.
Yeah, and that's because they had a lot of Canadian tax credit stuff going on.
Yeah, well, a lot of stuff gets shot in Hamilton, which, the Hammer, it always looks like a crap hole in every film it's featured in.
Mm-hmm. So tell me some more about your thoughts on this magnificent... 17 years in the making masterpiece.
Yeah. I went into it with the highest of hopes because, I saw the trailer. The trailer was pretty promising. Mm-hmm. I was like, oh, okay, it's crime film. Roger Avary has, bit of an outlandish flavor to it, a bit of a sense of humor. Stylish violence, certainly. I was not prepared for how excruciating it would be. The humor is broad to the point where no jokes landed whatsoever. It has a sense of whimsy about it, which doesn't work in the least. Mm-hmm. Every time it tried to be whimsical, I just wanted to pull out what remains of my hair. It had the inevitable French girl lead because because it's Roger Avary, and even more irritatingly, a little girl who isn't French but speaks French throughout the entire movie because she's just being annoying. Mm-hmm. She gets to have the most whimsical of whimsical moments
when she turns
invisible.
In the middle of a movie you're supposed to take seriously.
Yes. Yeah. There's that. We also have Crispin Glover showing up. Again, he's not a French character, and yet he insists on speaking in an outrageous French accent for the entire movie.
And they establish within the film, he's not even French. What is he doing?
Yes, he's crazy, and he likes to speak in a French accent.
I mean, look, here's the thing. Crispin Glover is always interesting, always entertaining, always fun to look at.
He gets off the easiest in this film, I have to say.
Absolutely. And like a lot of interesting characters that have come before him, he is merely a force of nature. Like Javier Bardem in No Country for Old Men, every person he meets is likely to be horribly murdered.
Yeah, he actually well, there's a lot of films where you have like here comes the Uber hitman.
Yes, the person who will just kill everybody in their path. Just clearing a swath.
Yeah,
so you
but
watch
they add this wrinkle of he's trying to avenge his brother. He has this.
Oh boy, was that not well written.
Yeah. He has an outrageous, pointless French accent because he's crazy. He likes very big guns and is obsessed with cars and keeps swapping them out for a new one.
Yeah, it's a strange movie.
And yet, because it's Crispin Glover and it's just him being crazy, I can forgive that because Crispin Glover can get away with all sorts of crazy stuff because that's just who he is.
Other than the bouncing car moment.
The bouncing car moment was hard to watch.
It was hard to watch because he steals a Latino gang member's car, I assume not knowing that the chassis can bounce.
Yeah, it's like on a ridiculous number of hydraulics.
But blink and you'll miss it. Scott Balkenbridge is an actor we both know who's from
this is how I know that this film was coming out because Scott started talking about it. I'm friends with him on Facebook, and we worked together on a show years and years ago. And so he's like, "Oh yeah, I have a role in this in the new Roger Avary film." I was like, "Oh, well, that's cool. I'll have to check that out." He is in it for about a minute and a half.
But that's being kind.
Yeah.
I mean, he's on camera for under 30 seconds, but the sequence he's in is a minute and a half. The thing is, there's never a clear shot of his face. In that entire sequence, he's either moving or screaming, and we're cutting away from him super fast. He unfortunately never gets a glamour shot, like enough to really go, oh, hey, it's Scott. It's pretty unfair to him, in fact, because he's in I wouldn't call it an important moment, but it's certainly memorable. He's a cop who pulls the car over and gets smushed by it.
Yeah, because and it's not even an intentional murder as such.
It does seem to be entirely accidental.
It's Crispin Glover's one non-intentional murder.
That's a good point. At any rate, it's a very strange movie. It's ill-conceived.
Well, I watched it with an eye that this might be an appropriate movie night fodder for the group. And I will spare them the indignity of having to sit through this.
It's the kind of movie you could watch with a group and laugh for the entire 90 minutes. But
I don't know about that.
It just depends on your take on it. Like, I didn't hate it as much as you, but I would never recommend this film. I don't think it's good. I was sad by the end of it. I didn't like any of the character conclusions. And we're going to come back with my most annoyed plot point of the film, something to do with art critics, right after this message.
Mm-hmm.
World music, interviews, new releases, community events every Saturday from noon to 2.
But otherwise we liked it, right?
1690 AM with Kelly.
Otherwise we liked it.
We travel all around
Otherwise it's amazing.
Yeah.
Other than the 90 minutes that it is terrible. Alright, 23 seconds.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's nothing to do about that window. Apparently they're draining the radiator.
Yeah, I see it now.
Yeah.
I didn't realize. Oh, I read their script. It's in the other room for this show.
Uh-huh.
There's some funny stuff in it.
The script for the entire show?
It's right, just the...
Or this promo?
The talking points, but it's like 2 pages of it.
Oh, yeah?
There's some funny stuff in there. I'll show you.
Oh, show me later. Yeah, definitely.
And we're back on CGLO 1690 AM. My name is Michael Brody. I'm joined by Shane Simmons. Our little show is called Cinema Smackdown. And today, in the scariest of scary career moves for the Halloween theme...
Spooky Halloween!
We're talking about the career and life choices of one Roger Avary. A man I still am interested in to some degree, but this new movie, Lucky Day, was certainly a low blow I didn't see coming.
Yeah, I was genuinely enthusiastic to see this, too.
In the lowest of low blows, just to finish off our mini review of this film, the main character, played by Luke Bracey, is an ex-convict whose wife is a struggling artist who's having a gallery show. It turns out her gallery show is essentially a bunch of blank canvases.
Well, they're prison walls, yeah.
It's a terrible, terrible idea by a person with no talent. And so the show is going horribly until Crispin Glover's murderer character shows up and just starts shooting every single person in the place.
But they all have it coming because they're critical of her work.
Exactly. And so actor after actor's head is blown apart, and their brains and blood are shot all over her canvases, which we learn 2 scenes later are now selling for millions of dollars each because now the art is finished. And the joke
Never mind
is,
that, it's full of DNA evidence for the police, but fine.
But now she's a wealthy, respected artist because critics are bad. And much like the scene in Lady in the Water where M. Night Shyamalan lectures us on how critics are bad and we're all better than that, it goes off about as well, I'd say. I was quite astonished at how insulting to every human on Earth.
Well, see, now Roger Avary will want to either splatter us all over a canvas or feed us to a monster dog like Bob Balaban did in Lady in the Water. So.
Exactly. Now that we've sort of discussed, unless you have any...
We are not critics,
we're not quite.
But we have opinions about the damn movies we watch, and this is a damn movie, all right.
At any rate, I'm now going to tell you the thing I heard on 2 separate podcast interviews I listened to with the cast and crew of Lucky Day, because Roger Avary has been very vocal about his experiences leading up to making this movie. To my mind, this is not a good film. It was probably made on the cheap. It's one of those, well, we have this much money, what can you fit in? Let me see if I can whip something up film. All right, I don't really like it, but I get what you're doing. If
you're shooting in Hamilton, Ontario, you're not swimming in money for your film.
This, however, is not the origins of this film. The origins of Lucky Day are, this is the movie he slaved over for 5 years in prison. This is the movie that depicts Roger Avary's true experience of being a prisoner. He talked about this like it was special and important and mattered.
So he paced a lot in his cell and did push-ups, because that's all we get of prison life in this.
But the whole point being, this is his, if I'm going to be incarcerated, I'm going to put my time to good use, making a wonderful piece of art.
And you know what I'm going to do when I'm, doing this film about my personal experiences? I have to put in an arbitrary scene of vehicular manslaughter.
In the 2 interviews I listened to, Roger Avary owned up to killing, to having to do time, all while giggling delightedly at how well his life was going. He brought the subject up. It was amazing to me. He's like, oh, by the way, we all know I did this terrible thing, and we really shouldn't make light of that, but let's talk about this hilarious and fun movie I've made. It was amazingly egotistical and awful when I heard this. And it's like, I get that you might have to embrace this, but wow, do you seem gleeful about it. And,
so how do I talk about my terrible, terrible crimes and promote my new movie?
Yeah.
Because you got to stay upbeat.
It is really something. By the way, he does mention that because of the way the prison system works, they will often confiscate things. So he couldn't keep written pages of the script. It wouldn't be possible. In many cases, they might be destroyed or confiscated. And so he said there was a loophole, and the loophole was that the prison system is not allowed to open sealed letters. So Roger Avary would write pages of the script, seal them in envelopes, and mail them to his daughter, who would then retype them and reshape the script for him. That is how this entire script was written. By the way, he didn't spend I don't want to exaggerate, he didn't spend 5 straight years writing this. He did also apparently write 4 other scripts and 2 books. But
okay.
Let's be clear.
If he spent more than 5 days on this piece of crap, that was time poorly wasted.
Apparently, though, this was a labor of love that he is extremely proud of. And it's just amazing to me.
Let's hope the other scripts are better.
I just hope they don't see the light of day at this point. The man probably wrote 25 scripts prior to going to jail. Those are allowed to surface. I do know he spent upwards of 3 years working on a Sandman movie, the Neil Gaiman concept, that ultimately fell apart because the producer, John Peters, insisted that at some point in the film, the Sandman character basically become a costume-wearing superhero who would punch people. Yeah, that was Avary's eventual take on it was, I have to walk away from this because I can't be party to
everyone would have to walk away from that one. That's just horrible.
Yeah, that keeps coming back, though, so I'm sure in the very near future...
That's almost as bad as saying, hey, let's make the a sequel to Watchmen that's all about race wars. That, just terrible, terrible mishandling of classic comic book material.
The thing is, look, no self-respecting creator of amazing work would ever sink that low.
No. Thank goodness.
Thank goodness that would never happen.
It could never possibly happen.
I feel
anyone with any sense would just veto that project immediately.
Yeah, but people with sense are not the sort of people who make things like Lucky Day. So that's amazing.
I'm not saying he can't possibly have another good film in him, but
Right.
it ain't this.
Yeah, that's my feeling as well. I read a little bit of other people's criticism about Lucky Day, and on at least 2 occasions I saw notes that said, it's not a great film, but it's so much better than Killing Zoe.
Yeah, they can go straight to hell.
I just don't even understand that criticism. Like, you don't have to like Killing Zoe, but it is a very
I'm not in the
well-made
Killing
movie.
Zoe cult,
Yeah.
but I enjoyed it when I saw it back in the day.
It's a smooth, well-acted, well-made film.
And this one, I was just watching the clock, waiting for the horrible experience I was going through to end.
Well, I mean,
It was like a trip to the dentist.
the hardest part about this is all those little dumb crime movie lines that are sub-Tarantino lines. And you say, look, you came from the same place as this guy. Do you really want to keep doing this mediocre tough guy dialogue that isn't really landing, that is only going to be compared poorly to the other work that either you've done and not been credited for, or that Tarantino's done on his own? It's kind of astonishing to me that this work is so minor compared to everything else that either guy has done.
And it's another Safecracker movie too. He's even repeating himself a little bit.
For the greatest Safecracker movie ever made, in my opinion, this is definitely not a movie that will appeal to many people.
Oh, I know where you're going. Hit me.
Gotta go Dom Hemingway.
Yep.
Dom
Yep, absolutely.
Hemingway is not. It's a movie by Richard. What's his?
Shepard.
Richard Shepard, the great Richard Shepard, who has made 3 absolute masterpieces.
A guy
in the
who
last
turned
8
his
years.
career around after years of meh stuff, and then started making little mini masterpieces with The Matador.
In a few weeks, I suggest that you watch Richard Shepard's new Netflix movie, and we do an episode about him.
We should.
Because he has a dozen movies leading up to his renaissance moment and his reemergence as a real filmmaker. But his new movie is very interesting, if only to compare it to his earlier work, for reasons we'd have to get into in a longer show. But I was talking about Dom Hemingway, which is a movie starring Jude Law at the height of his powers. If you've ever thought to yourself, that Jude Law, there's a spark of something interesting in him. There's 2 entire hours of him out-acting everyone in a way I never thought would be possible.
Not in a subtle way.
No.
No, he's going big in this one.
It also opens with, bar none, the greatest soliloquy about blowjobs that will ever be written or performed on the face of this planet. As I mentioned last week on our Halloween episode, that the end of the horror movie Pieces will never be beaten for sheer what? How did that happen? The opening sequence of Dom Hemingway is similarly astonishingly, brutally brilliant. In its
See, you're only making me want to see it again for a 3rd or 4th time and never, ever, ever revisit Lucky Day. Not one frame of it.
No, of course. But there's so much that's... I just want to point this out to anybody who hasn't seen, and I'm sure the majority of people have not seen Dom Hemingway. Dom Hemingway is a brilliant movie that most people will not like, especially on a first viewing, because it's a meandering plot about a guy who just keeps doing the exact thing that you are screaming at the movie, for God's sake, don't do that. For God's sake, do not start a fight with this guy.
He is a bit of a self-sabotaging character.
I've never seen something so successfully self-sabotaging. And the fact is, that makes that movie brilliant. But once I'd seen the whole film all the way through and watched it again, I had already liked it. But once I watched that journey his character takes of self-sabotage, I was in love with that film.
Yeah.
It is an amazing... It is so rare to watch a movie that is not entirely plot-driven, but is more just the machinations of a character's choices and thoughts and what have you. And for those who are completely unaware of this, his buddy, it is a buddy picture. It's Jude Law and Richard E. Grant.
Yeah.
And nobody talks about how great he is, especially in a film like this. He's not a lead. He's a side character, but boy, is he good in that film. So yeah, we can do 55 minutes about Roger Avary and kind of crap on him, but then we got to raise Richard.
Yeah, Richard Shepard is.
We
just have to say, yeah, there's a better Safecracker movie just lying there right under your nose. Go check that out. Mind you, I don't think people were queued up around the block to go see Lucky Day, so we're not really averting anyone from. Don't bother seeing this train wreck. I think most people were already on the page of, I'm not bothering to see that.
Right. I wouldn't say don't bother to see Lucky Day. If you've already enjoyed Roger Avary's work, you'll recognize his touches in this film, but they're, as I was saying at the very beginning, when I saw Killing Zoe, I was like, I really like this movie, but there are parts of it that don't quite work for me, whereas Lucky Day is only those parts. It's only the parts that don't really work for me, that I don't understand his particular vision. I don't really see why he wants to tell that kind of story, or why anybody would be willing to do farcical moments like the boss character who's always wanted to sleep with the wife, but waits until the day her convict husband gets home to try to force himself on her. Now that seems like good planning.
Mm-hmm.
I've been working with you for years, but today with your husband who went to jail for violence, now on the loose, I am going to make my intentions to you clear and try to sex blackmail you.
Yeah, not to mention this is also a character that for no reason has a painted-on mustache.
By the way, did you recognize that actor?
Oh yeah, no, it's David Hewlett, which
delightful Canadian gem.
Yeah, in a great many films for a great many. This is his worst performance, his worst appearance in anything ever.
I am astonished at the fact that his direction must have been no goofier. No, David, goofier.
Well, how about I paint on a mustache? Is that goofy enough for you, you jerk?
It worked for Groucho. It's gonna work for me. Well, that's been a delightful hour of ranting and raving about Roger Avary's career. Happy Halloween, everybody. We're a couple days out from that. I've been Michael Brody. I've been joined by Shane Simmons. Our little show has been called Cinema Smackdown. Any thoughts, Shane, as we quietly wander off into the sunset?
Yeah, check out my Amazon.com author page because I have a bunch of stuff on sale for Halloween. All the Halloween-y stuff is free this week.
Oh, isn't it?
Including Necropolis filmography and the short story Hot Pennies.
Holy cow, what am I doing sitting here?
I know.
I could be downloading and reading these right now.
And I didn't write any of them in prison. Not one.
But next week you will favor us with what you did write.
Oh well, yes, of course.
What is the title of your new novel, Shane?
The new novel is it's not. It's called Epitaph. It is the sequel to Necropolis. So, read Necropolis for free, Kindle Unlimited right now.
All right, guys, we'll see you next week.
You're listening to CJLO 1690.
That's good. I like that we had 40 seconds of promotion at the end. It works for me.
Yeah, I heard a notion on the way over here that I might want to.
Yeah, I
plug that in. It's like,
I'm
right,
really
yeah.
Glad that you got that in.
I have free stuff this week.
1690 a.m. for the week of October 21st to October 27th.
And then, of course, I forgot the name of my novel.
Hey, I mentioned it last week.
That is only delightful. No one is ever going to shit on you for that. That's fine.
All things spooky and fantastical at this festival at the end of October in Montreal. There will be a wide
I'm just looking around to see if there's something I forgot to fix. Oh, well, I will find out.
As well as a collector's market.
I do not want to be the next
Taking
guy
place
whose
downtown,
email
starts
is
last
open
Friday,
to the
October 18th,
public.
and is once again running till the 31st on Halloween. This event will
Well, I
be
can't wait to link this on Facebook so Scott Falconbridge can go and watch us shit all over this movie. Poor guy.
Actually, I guess we should have discussed the terms of that earlier.
That's right.
Well, it's not his fault.
I know, but I mean, I was polite in him in saying he didn't really get a glamour shot.
No.
We should have had.
It's a bit part for a Canadian actor in a film that was shot in Canada, so.
But it would have been nice if he, got the whole flow.
Normally that part would have gone to John Moore.
This Thursday, the 24th.
Yeah, well, thankfully that didn't happen.
2 p.m. in GM 300.22 downtown.
Oh, wow.
And don't worry, this won't be the last event that they're coming this year, so I'll be sure to keep you guys on top.
A lot of information here.
For the
There's
third
a planned
event,
power
instead of
outage.
Concert, I have a film festival that's being thrown on our very own.
Yeah, I always forget, but,
Starting October 25th through November 4th,
worst
the
case
South Asian
scenario,
Festival is
you
being
can't
held at
come or it
Victoria's
is a
very own
deluge outside.
Jazzy Cinema
Try the
in
phone
Library
in.
Building downtown.
At least it'll
The
still be a
event's
show.
website says
Well.
South Asian Film
I
Festival.
mean, I like the idea.